Alright, hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It is the beginning of March, so it is time for my February wrap-up. This month I was able to get through 6 books. I will say, luckily, I have gotten my first 5-star read of 2021. Unfortunately, I only got one 5-star read of 2021, but this month I had no 2-star reads and no 1-star reads. I mean, 1-star reads are very rare for me, but hey, I started off January with some 1-star and 2-star reads, so looking up right now, I would say. But yeah, so let's dive in. First up, I read The Chestnut Man by Søren Sveistrup. Still have no idea if I'm saying that name correctly, but regardless, this book was fabulous. So this was my 5-star read. I do have a full in-depth review on this book on my channel. I am obsessed with this book. I have never ever even heard of Søren Sveistrup before. Like I said in my review, I found this on like the recommended page at Politics and Prose bookstore in Washington, D.C., and I read it blindly. It is a Danish book that has been translated into English, and it is so unbelievably fabulous. I'll quickly read the back of the book. Psychopath is terrorizing Copenhagen. His calling card is a chestnut man, a handmade doll composed of matchsticks and 2 chestnuts, which he leaves at each bloody crime scene. Examining the doll's forensics makes a shocking discovery: a fingerprint belonging to a young girl, a government minister's daughter, who had been kidnapped and murdered a year ago. Tragic coincidence or something more twisted? To save innocent lives, or a pair of detectives must put aside their differences to piece together the Chestnut Man's gruesome clues, because it's clear that the madman is on a mission that is far from over and no one is safe. I think this is the only book that I'm going to actually read the back of the book for you guys for today. I'll give you guys my own brief summaries. I just think this book is a really good book to go into not really knowing much about it. It is a detective crime drama about 2 detectives trying to catch a serial killer who is basically leaving these little chestnut dolls at his crime scenes, and they think that it might be related to another case because of the evidence found. I just want to leave it with that. I definitely talk more in depth about this book in my longer review, but this was a book I pretty much went into blind, and I'm so happy that I did. If you're a fan of SVU or any of those, like, even like True Detective, like the first season of True Detective, you will probably really like this book. I really like the European setting. It is primarily set in Copenhagen, but they do go to a couple other German cities and towns, and I just thought this book was mind-blowingly good. I can't recommend it enough. I didn't want to put this book down. It's like 500 pages, and I read it in like 3 days because I was just devouring it. This blew me away. For an author I'd never heard of before, I cannot express how much I loved this book. Okay. So second, this is Paradise Club by Tim Meyer. I also did a full review on this book up on my channel earlier this month. If you watched that, you will know that this was a 4-star read for me. This was in my January 2021 Nightworms package. This book just came out like February 5th, I want to say, and this was so much fun. This book is pretty much taking like Cabin in the Woods and The Purge, the whole like Fire Island debacle, a little bit of like the game show Survivor, and like some cosmic horror, and throwing it all together in a melting pot, and you get this book. It's very fun. The premise is pretty simple. Family wins a vacation to an all-inclusive resort that they get to go to for free. The only catch is that they have to give up all forms of communication to the outside world when they get to the island. So like no cell phones, no computers, whatever. And it's fishy, and it gets really weird. And there's something really sinister going on the island, and our main character, Elliot, who is a former FBI agent, is trying to figure out what exactly is going on. I'm going to leave it with that. This is a great beach read. I would say it's fun. It's very easy to read. It's pretty quick, fast-paced. And what I loved about this book so much was the amount of character development that Tim Meyer was able to put into a book that was this short. So it's only like 260 pages or something like that. And there's a whole handful of characters. I would say like 10 characters that you feel like somewhat attached to in the book, and you get to know them so well. And he just really is able to put you into this island, give you these, what do they call it in Fight Club? Like self-serving friends or whatnot. where it's just like a temporary glimpse into who these characters are. You get to know them really well, you feel attached to them, and then all this chaos ensues, and you kind of follow where all these different characters go throughout the book. That sounds really jumbled, but yeah, it's a very good character study. It's a very good, fun book. It really, really pays homage to a bunch of like awesome horror tropes. Even though I say it feels similar to The Purge and it feels similar to Cabin in the Woods, it's definitely influenced by those movies. It's not directly ripping them off, and that was a big distinction for me. The very end of the book didn't blow me away. I also had wished it was just a little bit longer to kind of clear some things up at the very end, but for the most part, I'd say the first 2/3 of the book were a 5-star, and then the ending wasn't my favorite style, so it dropped a star, but other than that, highly, highly, highly recommend it. Tim Meyer is now on my list of authors I want to know more about and read as much as I can. All right, third. So this was a 4-star read for me. The way I do my ratings is a little interesting. I only give 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5-star reads. I'll talk about a book sometimes as if it's like a star in like a fraction or something like that. So where Tim Meyer's Paradise Club is definitely on the higher end of the 4-star spectrum, this is on the lower end. And this is because this is a book by Ronald Malfi. This is an author I really, really like, and I hold him to a very high standard when I read his books, and this book just didn't blow me away as much as his others. So this is The Narrows. This is Ronald Malfi's tribute to Dracula, which a lot of authors like to do pretty often, and I feel the most famous would be Salem's Lot, which is Stephen King's tribute to Dracula. And this is a very interesting, very original, very unique spin on a vampire story. I enjoyed this book. However, I only ever found one character storyline that I felt really attached to, and that character's storyline drives the plot, but kind of disappears as the story goes on. And so for me, I found that like the one character I was the most invested in became less and less of a priority. Sort of like, but not exactly, like if you read The Stand, like Nick Andros, like he's like the pivotal character, and then all of a sudden he's not really needed anymore kind of thing, which did always bother me in The Stand. But similar kind of thing here, even though I wouldn't compare any of the characters in this book to Nick Andros. Regardless, yeah, this book is fine. This book is fine, but it didn't grip me the way that other Ronald Malfi books did. I just never found myself really caring about the characters. It's not like they were bad characters, and the story is quite interesting. But there was just nothing either super likable about the characters, and then the characters that were pretty likable just weren't very interesting. They almost felt like an outline, like an underdeveloped character. Like I just wish there had been a little bit more to round out these characters, which Ronald Malfi is known for doing settings really, really well, and the town of Stillwater in this book is amazing. I'll just give you the premise real quick. There seems to be like something going on in the town of Stillwater. It's a very remote town in western Maryland. I am from Maryland, so they really nailed the Maryland vibe of this book. And the theory is that it could be vampires. And so it does become almost like a detective story as well. I really like detective stories where one of our main characters is like I think he's like the deputy sheriff. He's like the second in charge at the police station. And he's trying to figure out exactly what is going on, and why a bunch of little boys have gone missing suddenly. But yeah, no, this was a fun read. This was a quick, easy read, but it just didn't grip me on the level that a lot of Malfi's books usually do. So it did borderline between getting a 3-star rating and a 4-star rating, but I did still love the originality, and I love the way Malfi built the town, and then the big like reveal of what was going on. I thought that was very, very well done. So it did get a 4-star, but it's a solid like 4.0 if I had to say that. Which leads me to my next book. This is The Dead Zone by Stephen King. This was my buddy read of the month. I did it with my friend Shannon. She is Find Me in the Footnotes on Instagram. She is lovely. And we did a buddy read of this book together. So I will say this book had a couple things going against it for me that I didn't realize when I picked it up. The number one being that this is the first installment of Stephen King's like Castle Rock books. They're not a series, but the Castle Rock books are pretty intertwined by like being set in Castle Rock. I've read Cujo before. Sorry, there's a storyline in the Dead Zone that is continued in Cujo. So there was a big storyline in this book that I knew the ending to solely because I had read Cujo first, which I wasn't super happy about having, you know, read Cujo before. So I really wish I had read this first. I think I would have liked this book a little bit more. So basically the premise of this book is a teacher named Johnny Smith gets into a horrible car accident, and when he wakes up from his coma several years later, all of a sudden he's got crazy psychic powers, and he can like see the future and see people's pasts, and he knows a bunch of stuff, and he has no explanation as to why he knows it. And that's pretty much the book. And I think that was my issue with this, is there's not like an overarching plot in this. It's almost like an episodic read where we just get these snapshots of Johnny's life and how he uses his power. And then eventually like you get to like the culmination at the end of the book where like, ooh, like this is what his power was kind of always meant for and why. And it was fine, but being like set in like a novel, I just found it a little boring. I want to say, like, every couple chapters would be, again, another stage in Johnny's life and just, like, what he was doing. I wouldn't really call this a horror novel. It's not super scary at all. It is extremely political. Reading this book, I totally understand why Stephen King wanted to write something like 11/22/63. These have very similar tones to, I haven't read 11/22/63, but I've seen the show, sorry. So I know, like, the premise and the story, but I would say very similar tones. I'd almost see this as, like, an outline for what he wanted to do with 11/22/63. There's no time travel or anything in this book, but definitely very similar themes, very, very similar motives, concepts. Definitely an inspiration, I would say, if I had to make a guess on that. And it's fun seeing King talk about politics from the time that this was written. So written in 1979, takes place primarily like throughout the decade of the 70s, I would say. Lots of social commentary on the politics going on. And it's fine. It's fine. This was a 3-star read for me. If I had to give like a fraction of it, it would be a 3.8. I will say if this had been written by like any other author, this would probably have been a 4-star read for me, but Stephen King is my favorite author and I hold his books to the highest of highest standards. So when I review his stuff, a lot of times if I dislike one of his books, even if they're great, they're going to get a lower rating than a book that any other author had written. I'm always harder on Stephen King books, but it's because he's my favorite author, so I expect the highest level of craftsmanship from him. All right, next up, I did it. I went in and I read Bird Box. I read Bird Box because of the hype. The same reason I read The Ritual, pretty much actually. My sister saw the movie on Netflix and loved it and was like, oh, it's based on a book, you should read this. So I read the book. This is a very well written book. This is a 3-star read from me, straight up 3-star read from me. Very, very well written book. A lot of forgettable characters, a lot of dislikable characters. But again, very well written, very fast to read, very easy to read. My biggest issue with this is the premise of Bird Box. So Bird Box, basically these like creatures have come to Earth. If you see them, you kill yourself and people around you, if there are people around you. And so our main character Mallory has been basically trying to survive and has been living like blindly with her 2 kids for 4 years and is trying to like just live through the end of the world. I do not buy at all that the characters in this book were able to go from being average Joes to people who could literally function as well as they could without any kind of vision in the way that they did so quickly. Like, if there had been, like, somebody who was blind in their group to show them and to teach them, yes, this book would have been so much more believable to me. But there wasn't. They were just average people with, like, 0 survival backgrounds, doing these crazy things, all with blindfolds on, and talking to me as if I would just accept that that would be totally plausible. Like there's like a scene, I think, where Mallory is driving and she's like driving with like her eyes open and then closed and open and closed. And I'm sorry, I don't think I could go like 3 feet in a car with my eyes closed. Like I do not believe that this would happen. There's so many things in this book, the way that they set up like the house that they're staying in with all of like the markers so they can feel things and get around. Like, how did you do that? How did you do that? You know, and since we don't know what these monsters look like they're constantly looking for monsters with like their hands and like broomsticks. Like, how would you feel the monster? What if it's like this big? What if it's this big? Like, you don't know. You don't know. So I really couldn't get past that. I found the ending to just kind of be whatever. I know that it's become like a series now. Like, I definitely own Mallory. I got that in a Nightworms package, the second book. I didn't hear great things about it, and I don't know if I'll ever read it because I didn't care about this. But yeah, it does kind of end on like a cliffhanger that could maybe not be a cliffhanger. I don't know. But it's fine. I will say that there is one character in this book named Gary who is terrifying. He is so scary. And when I was reading the chapters with Gary, I was on the edge of my seat with it because I was like, whoa, didn't expect this to happen. Totally didn't see this coming. This is fabulous. And then there's a scene with Gary and Mallory. I will say up. I'll just say up. Yeah, if you read the book, you know what scene I'm talking about. And that was like so dread-inducing, and I thought it was so brilliantly done. I really, really loved that, and I really wanted that storyline to progress further, and had that happened, it probably would have become a 4-star read for me, because I did think Gary was a very, very, truly terrifying character. Like, he really unnerved me. He was so believable. He was a great foil to other characters in the novel, and I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. But he was also really, apart from Mallory, like the only super memorable character. I felt like everybody else was flat, and like Mallory's personality was like, I'm kind of mean and cold because I'm trying to survive, and like that was it. So I will definitely read more Mallerman. He does have, I think, 2 books coming out this year. Goblin is the one that I think I'm gonna actually read and review on my channel. So we will see if Mallerman can impress me. Okay, and last but not least, Survivor Song by Paul Tremblay. This was a 4-star read for me. This teetered on being a 3-star read for me. If you know anything about me, I love Paul Tremblay. I think A Head Full of Ghosts is one of the greatest horror novels written in the recent years. I like Cabin at the End of the World a lot. I know a lot of people don't, but I do. I thought this was fine. I really picked it up thinking it was going to be an end of the world apocalypse story. It's not. It's not. It's kind of a story is that a rabies supervirus has infected animals and people in the state of Massachusetts, and basically it's consolidated to Massachusetts, and people have to fight to survive in Massachusetts, which I really liked. I really liked that it was able to be condensed to one state. I like that it's not an end of the world story, and I like that Paul Tremblay kind of tells you from the get-go, like, this isn't the end of the world, this is just a microcosm of it. This book was technically written before the whole coronavirus outbreak thing happened, but it did come out after. I think it came out in July of 2020. And just reading it and just knowing like what I know now about how like a pandemic would be handled, it hits you very, very close to home. I will say it seems to be managed a lot better in this book than it was in real life. So the premise of this book, it takes place from the perspective of 2 different women. One is named Natalie and one is named Rams, and they are best friends from college and now like grown up, and Rams is a doctor and Natalie is pregnant, and they band together to try and survive this apocalypse. I'm just gonna leave it at that because I think this book does benefit you if that's kind of all that you know. I will say that those 2 characters, they were fine characters, but they were a little dull for my liking. They're very real, believable characters, but they weren't the type of characters that really gripped me into it. And the problem with this is that they're kind of the only characters in the book. I haven't read Disappearance at Devil's Rock or Devil's Creek, whatever. I think it's a Disappearance at Devil's Rock. Paul Tremblay has written. I know characters from that book appear in this book, so I do now want to read that because I did actually like the characters that make like brief appearances in this book that are from that book. But yeah, this book was just fine. I never felt like I needed to know what happened. I really, really didn't. And I think that was my problem with this, is it's very well written. I really did enjoy the concept and the premise, but the characters just felt very like blah to me. They didn't have enough of a backstory to really grip me. They didn't have any kind of haunting past or anything that just made them somebody that I wanted to read about at the apocalypse. They were just your average people. And I guess like maybe that's kind of needed now, is like, what would the average person do in the apocalypse, you know? And you kind of get that with Bird Box. But again, I didn't really believe Bird Box super well. Like, I don't believe like that would happen. But in this, I do actually believe that the reactions that these women have would happen. And maybe that's what made it boring to me, is it was a little too realistic and dull, because maybe the apocalypse isn't super exciting for everybody. And it was fine. It was totally fine. Like, I wouldn't knock it. If you like Paul Tremblay, yeah, go ahead and read this. But again, this was a 3-star read for me. I really went into this expecting this to be like a 4. And it wasn't. It was just okay. So that is all that I have for my monthly wrap-up. Just to go through one more time. Survivor's Song by Paul Tremblay. Bird Box by Josh Malerman. The Dead Zone by Stephen King. Ronald Malfi's The Narrows. Paradise Club by Tim Meyer. And of course, my all-star read, The Chestnut Man by Soren Sveistrup. Check this book out. Especially because it's apparently going to be made into a Netflix series or movie. I'm not sure. I think a series would work better because that book is a little long. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I have a bunch of new videos to come. As always, I post every Monday and Thursday. And if you enjoy my videos, hit those like and subscribe buttons down below. And I will catch you guys in the next one.